Hello my friends and welcome back to part 2 of our series, of our Archway series. In this part we're going to be focusing on UVs, a little bit of retopology, and bakes for the whole thing. So I'm going to be covering some interesting techniques that have been evolving in the industry and some things that might be quite new to some of you. You don't want to miss the last part of this series. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe because that of course helps us and you will get the notification when we launch the next part. The low poly process for this one's going to be a very unique one, and I know that we're going to get a lot of people asking us like, why are you doing it this way? Is it really one way to do it? And the answer is yes. Again, you might not do this in every single production. There might be productions where they tell you, no, bring this into Maya, do traditional retopology, or use Topogon or Blender or whatever, and you're gonna do it that way. But I'm gonna show you a slightly different technique that for environment pieces like this is very efficient, even though it might not seem that way, and it's very fast. So the first thing I need to do is I'm gonna clone this. I want to work on a clone so that I don't mess with the original piece, and I'm gonna Dynamesh without groups on. I'm gonna Dynamesh at a high resolution level as well. So we're gonna go all the way to like 1600 or something like that, and I'm gonna Dynamesh. What this should do, I don't want to freeze subdivision levels. What this should do is should merge all of the stones into a single piece. You can see it's a 5 million piece right here, and everything is a single, hopefully watertight mesh. This is one of the important parts because it's going to make our job so much easier. So to certify that this thing is watertight, I'm going to use a little trick here that I use normally for 3D printing, which is grabbing a cube very quickly, turning on live booleans, and making this cube subtract. Now, if I push this cube up, I can use it as a sort of like scanner, and I make this cube very like thin. I can use it as a scanner, and as I push through the element, I'm gonna be able to see if there are any air pockets. For instance, there's a little bit of an air pocket there on some of the bricks. That's fine. As long as there are no internal air pockets, we should be fine, okay? So we push this down, 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 and there we go. All of the meshes, there's a little bit of, can you see that? That right there on the left side, it's right there. It's a little bit of an air pocket. Again, it's not horrible, but it could potentially be a little bit of a problem, that one right there. So just keep it in mind. Right now we're just using this to keep in mind whether or not we have those sort of like air pockets. And once we are like relatively sure that this is going to work, we leave it like that, okay? Now, the process to take the actual high poly that we're going to be used for bakes is, of course, to decimate. So I'm going to go here to C plugin, decimation master, and we're going to pre-process this current element. Normally, for this kind of stuff, I either go with a 10% decimation or directly to 250K. I think in this case, 10% is going to be more than enough. It's just going to give us like 500,000 points, which is around 1 million polygons. So this to me looks like a good high poly. And we're going to export. FBX, very important, and this one's going to be HP Archway. Again, always use suffixes or prefixes or whatever to have a clean organization on your stuff. All of this stuff we're going to leave normal. Smooth normal is very important. Hit OK, and that's it. That's going to be the high poly that we're going to be using inside the substance to bake everything down. Now, for the low poly, we're actually going to be using this one right here, but we're going to be decimating this even more. So instead of doing a 10% decimation, I'm going to control C, and I'm going to go all the way down to something like a 0.1 decimation. We need to pre-compute again. Let me do that real quick. There we go. So once this is done, again with the pre-computation, we're going to decimate it all the way to like a 0.1%, and I'm going to decimate current. And this is what we're going to see. And I know you hate it, because when I was taught this technique, I also hated it. But this is the most optimal way to decimate and optimize the geometry for this kind of elements. Because look at this. I know it looks horrible. You look at it and it's like, why? Why are we doing this? Why are you doing this to me, Ave? But the thing is, even if I were to go and do the retopology of every single piece, I won't be able to capture the silhouette as cleanly as the decimation process has done it here, and as optimal as it has done it as well. Because you can see we only have 4,350 active points, which means that it's sub 10k triangles. This is sub 10k triangles, and look at how clean the silhouette looks, right? Like when you see it from afar in the game, it looks like the high poly, exactly the same as the high poly. This is what we want. And again, I know it might be a very hard truth to believe right now, but a lot of the assets nowadays, rocks, buildings, walls, stones, mountains, they do it with this specific purpose. Keep in mind, this is only because the object will not deform. Super important. If the object is going to be deformed or destroyed, or is going to use some sort of like manipulation with vertices and things like that, you might not use this technique. Now, can we optimize this further? Could we lower this all the way down to like sub 5k triangles or something like that? Yes, but this is going to give us a very nice amount of triangles that's still going to keep our game running relatively light while giving us a very nice silhouette and forms. So let's go over here to export, and we're going to export this, of course, as not HP, but in this case LP. And this one has no UVs, so I'm gonna mark this as no UVs in big letters, because very frequently, again, we also forget about which files do have UVs and which ones do not. So let's jump back into Maya. We don't need this image plane anymore. We technically don't need this one anymore either. We bring the low poly archway no UVs. The size should be exactly the same, like it should be matching with the size that we had before. And look at that, it looks very nice. Again, from a silhouette standpoint, it looks very, very cool. So now we need to jump onto the UVs. And again, this is where a lot of people are going to be like, why? Why are we doing this? This is not optimal. This is not how I was taught how to do it at school. I understand. I know. But these techniques are some of the techniques that are being used in studios nowadays. So it's important that you utilize them as well. So I'm going to assign a new material. It's going to be a basic Lambert material. And the reason why I like to do that is because by default, the Lambert material is very sort of like dark or light, and it's very difficult to see what's going on. And we're going to use the process that I normally use for my materials, for my objects, which is the 5 steps to UVs that I always talk about. First of all, let's delete all of the UVs. We're going to make sure that we have no UVs available. Then we're going to do UVs, and we're going to do a camera base mapping. So if we take a look at the UVs, you're going to see that the UVs are just like a snapshot of the object. And here's where we're going to see whether or not we have some UV issues. Because what I want to do is I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to grab half the faces of the element like this. Even if it looks like serrated edges, that's fine. We're going to be using some techniques in Substance to sort of like hide that effect. So we're going to grab half of the faces right there. And once we have that, we're going to go UV and do another camera base mapping. What that should do is it should divide our object into 2 main meshes right here. 2 main like points or elements, right? Once we have this, I'm going to do a Control U to unfold, and this is where I'm going to know whether or not we have issues. And there we go, we do have issues. So all of these islands that you see right here, these are all islands that are like not working properly with the objects that we have. And it could be that there are like empty areas, right, like there, or there might be areas that are just like having like some issues with the topology. If this happens, don't worry, just mesh display and then unlock normals. So they're back to normal. Very, very common mistake after the unfold. And what I like to do at this particular point is I like to go for the islands, all of these islands right here. And since I already know that they're going to be problematic areas for my UVs because they're having issues or like fixing or trying to find them, actually, there's another easier way. Grab this UV shells and then shift select all of the other ones and just delete those UV shells, but also delete the faces here. There we go. So now the object's going to be left with a lot of little points right there, little edges that we need to fix. We definitely do need to bridge them back. And this is a little bit of the cleanup process that we're going to need to do. So even though we're using a technique that's definitely going to save us time from a retopology perspective, that doesn't mean that we're free to just like destroy whatever we want. So I'm going to bring in my high poly. Very important thing. If we try to bring in the archway, it's going to have the same name. So I'm going to change this archway here to LP. And now I'm going to bring in my high poly. Otherwise, since they have the same name coming from ZBrush, Maya doesn't like when 2 objects have the exact same name. So we're going to grab the high poly there, make it a light surface, grab our low poly, and go into our retopology process. And now all of the points where we had issues, we need to fix, right? So all of these faces, we need to start fixing a little bit of the elements. So for instance here, let's add a little triangle right there, another one right here. That one actually kind of looks like more of a triangle, so let's keep it like a triangle. And triangles are your friends at this point, okay? Don't be worried about like creating like weird looking like shapes, because we just want to recover or recreate the elements that we had, okay? So this cleanup process is going to be very, very important to make sure that we don't have any issues on these projections that we're having. And this is because like this right here, look at that. Huge islands of faces right there that are going into that like pocket. Remember that we talked about the pockets? So we don't want that. We don't want that pocket, so we're going to delete all that stuff. And here we need to use our traditional like retopology techniques and retopology ideas to just rebuild the surfaces as cleanly as possible. I'm gonna spend a couple of minutes here just like going over all of the different islands that I just showed you that have some issues, and I'm gonna start cleaning up the geometry so that when we do the unfold again, we can get 2 very clean areas, the front area and the back area. So once you go through this whole cleanup process and your retopology is looking good, the one thing that I did differently, and it's not recorded, is that I used my cut tool, and as you can see, I added a line that goes pretty much straight through the whole thing. It doesn't have to be exactly on the symmetry line because we're always going to be using this object as a whole. But I'm going to use that to be able to divide the back part and the front part a lot easier for this particular arch. So once I have that, we're going to do UVs again, and now we're going to take a look at how we can improve the textile density to get a very nice result. I'm going to go UV, and we're going to do a camera-based projection. Once we do that, we're going to go top view, and thanks to that line that I added with the cut tool, which by the way I follow with a triangulate to make sure that we don't have any endguns. Once I did that, I'm able to just very quickly grab 1/2 of the element, say UV, camera-based projection again, and now if we go back to the UV editor, we're going to be very easily able to generate this sort of like cut right here. Now, as you can see, if I just unfold and lay out, we're going to have a lot of wasted space. And this is a very important concept that a lot of people seem to forget about UVs. But your UV island will only packed as nicely as the smallest or like the biggest island that you have. So if this is the biggest island and we pack it, we're going to have to compress it so that it fits within the square. But if we like subdivide this into 2 areas, then the texture space is going to be a little bit bigger because we're going to be able to fit more stuff into the UV island, okay? So what I'm going to do here is as follows. I'm going to go UV shell, grab those faces and isolate them. There we go. And once they're isolated, I'm going to go into face mode and I'm going to use the lasso tool. I rarely use the lasso tool, but in here I use it quite frequently. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the bottom stones right there, then press shift to add to the selection, grab this ones right here. And then I'm going to skip 4, and I'm going to grab 4 right here. Make sure that we clean up this selection as nice as possible. And once we have this selection, I'm going to do UV and another camera-based projection. What that will do, as you're about to see, is that it will divide every single section into multiple sections, right? So we got the base right there, we got this one's right there, and now if we grab all of this, guys, so it seems like we accidentally split this one. I'm going to grab that one and just hit so, but it goes back into where it should be. And now we grab all of this, Control U to unfold them, and then Control L. And as you can see, they fit way better because they're smaller, and the smaller segments will fit better in our traditional sort of like location. The only problem, of course, is that we still need to do the other one. And yes, there's going to be a little bit of distortion on some of the elements, right? Like we're going to have the seam line that we're going to have to clean inside the substance before we finish texturing. So there we go. All of our archway should be properly like unfolded. We press Control U, and then we can press Control L, and this is what we're gonna get. Now, is this the best packing that we can get? Probably yes. It might not be the exact best that we can get, but it's gonna be definitely closer. And we need to check textile density. And the way we check it here inside of Maya is by going into the transform panel, and down here we're gonna set a specific resolution for this map. Now, this is a big archway, so I would imagine that a 496 maps or a 4K map is gonna be good for this one. And if I hit get, I'm gonna get a specific, select all of this and we hit get, we're gonna get specific value. So in this case, 5.4. So is 5.4 a good value for what we wanna do? Yes and no. Ideally, we want things to be, you know, a little bit more high definition. But the more high definition we add or the more density we add to our elements, the more maps we're gonna have to use. Since this is a personal project, I will go a little bit more towards the quality side of things. I'm going to push things a little bit more than I should. And if I want to get my golden number, which in this case is going to be 10, I want my textile density to be 10 pixels per unit, then I'm going to need either an 8K map or we need to divide this into 2 tiles, right? We're going to have tile number 1 and tile number 2, or 2 material sets. Back in the day, we would do 2 material sets, like let's say front part of the archway, back part of the archway. However, nowadays we can actually use UDIMs. So I'm going to go to modify, layout, and I'm going to change back here or down here the U tiles to 2. 2 U tiles, 1 V tile. I'm going to hit apply. What that will do, as you can see, is it will split things into 2 tiles. And now if I get this, we're going to get closer to 10. We're still not at 10, and I'm not exactly sure why. We should be like a lot closer. I do see a little bit of a difference in some of the elements. It's not too bad. Like this is going to give us a good resolution, but we can definitely make a better job on this ones right here. Another thing I'm seeing is, for instance, this blocks right here, this like a walls, the sections of the walls, the way they're unfolding might not be ideal either. And we can optimize things a little bit more. If we were to grab the whole thing here, I'm going to go to face mode. I'm just going to grab the underlying faces, the faces that are on the bottom part. And once I do that, I'm going to do UV and again, camera-based projection. So now we add an extra cut that down there, and that should allow me to unfold things a little bit nicer and lay them nicer as well. Let's see, get 6.9. We actually went down. That's a little bit weird. Now, here's where unfortunately the Maya packing solution is not the best. Now, this layout problem that we have right here is definitely annoying, and unfortunately not every software has the same solutions for specific things such like this. Now, can we get away with this? Can we just texture this, get a 7 pixel per unit density? Yeah, it's gonna work just fine. We're getting 2K maps for this whole thing. Yes, it's a lot of surface area, but it can work. Can we use other things such as stylable textures, for instance? Yes, but I really want to texture this as a little bit more of a, again, modular hero asset, because we're gonna be using it a couple of times. So it's important that we understand that there are specific tools that we can use for other things, such as, for instance, RISM. Now, I don't like to promote or to ask my students to buy new stuff just for a very specific part of the software, but I do want to have this on this course so that you guys see how more advanced specialized tools can definitely give you a little bit of an edge. So if I go here to files and I load with UVs, I can go to the Archway here, load in my low poly Archway, and let's load. There we go. And this is what we have right here. Now, on my UDIMs, I'm gonna set to 1 UDIM size, and what I can do is I can go to this guys right here, select all the faces, and I can try packing them. And as you can see, it's gonna do a little bit of a better job packing the whole thing. And now, instead of getting, I believe it was 7 point something, the map resolution here, we need to change to 4K. There we go. So if we change this to 4K, we should be getting, there you go. So 7.93 compared to Maya, which gave us, if you remember, a 6.9 without really doing much. We've managed to use, in this case, RISM, that packs things a little bit better, to get this into a 7.9. So almost 8 pixels per unit, which again, for an object like this, which is not going to be the main focus of our character, it's very close to 10, which is what a hero asset is going to have. So we're definitely a lot closer. So yeah, just as a small bonus, guys, if you have other tools and you want to use them in production, in your projects, everything goes. Like, you can use a lot of different strategies, and as long as you get a nice result, then you are going to be doing great. I'm going to bring back the Archway now with the clean UVs, or with the optimized UVs right here. There we go. And again, if we check the UV editor here inside of Maya, it did change some of the orientations a little bit. We get this, and yeah, 7.9. So that's great. And we are ready to jump onto the next stage. So let's prepare this asset for the baking process, for the baking and preparation process. I'm going to add a new material, or on the materials that it has, I'm just going to change its material name to a material that's going to be closer to what we want. So in this case, it's going to be called M Ruins, because this is part of that Ruins kit, and this is going to be Archway. Okay? That's going to be the name of the material that this object has. If you have multiple objects, you can have multiple materials, but in this particular case, we want that. Make sure that mesh display and soften edge is enabled. We want to keep everything soft and edge in this case to get the best possible bakes. Make sure that the transform information is completely clean, 0001111. We don't want anything. Make sure that the pivot point is right there on the center, and of course, we need to make sure that the high poly is exactly on top of the low poly. Now, in this particular case, very interesting mistake, but I'm keeping it so that you guys know what to do in case you get it. The tiles were actually going a little bit across the line right there. It was almost nothing. So it's just a matter of checking. Now, the cool thing is Substance will tell you what's going on. So you can see here it says errors have been found while splitting meshes per UV tiles. Mesh CB Archway LP has phases spanning across multiple UDIMs in 002 down. So it gave me a very specific point or where things are. This is one of those things that not a lot of artists do, which is read the logs and read what's going on from a programming standpoint, because if you do that, you are going to learn like what's really happening. Like most of the time when my students tell me that they're having some sort of like issue and I check their scenes, I tell them what does the error says, and the error will usually tell you what's going on. So yeah, don't ignore the errors. So now we export this back, so export selection, and that's it. With that optimized, we can now jump into the baking process of the whole thing, and we can prepare for the texturing process as well. So we are here inside of Substance Painter, and of course, we're going to start our new project. It's going to be a 2K project, or sorry, a 4K project actually, right? Because we want a lot of geometry. We're going to select our Archway. So let's go over here to the Archway, this one right here, the basic one. And this is a very important question. Do we do normal map, DirectX, or OpenGL? Unreal Engine works with DirectX. Ideally, you want to work with DirectX. So I'm going to keep it like this. And since we're using UDIMs, we are going to select this one right here and hit OK. Let's go back here, just export it again. There we go. So no problem. Everything loads very, very nicely. And now we can jump onto the bakes. I'm going to go here into the baker option. We're going to, of course, bake at 4K. and we're going to use the HP Archway that we just exported with the material ID, and this is what we get. Now, one of the amazing things about the method that I'm teaching you, which is the decimated method for this kind of assets, is that you will rarely, if ever, get any errors here with the cages, because they're so close to the original mesh, because we got it from the decimation, that it's pretty much going to be like perfect. Like, we don't even need to change the max frontal distance or the max rear distance. Like 0.1 or 0.01 is more than enough to capture all the detail, and that's it. Just go to town. So look at this beauty right here. Amazing bakes, things look very nice. Yes, we lose a little bit of resolution if we get really close, but for a third-person game, I think this is very nice. Now, I'm just worried a little bit about that kind of stuff right there. Unfortunately, not much we can do about it due to how the mesh is like made up. Usually with enough texture work like dirt, rust, and things like that, we're gonna be able to hide that stuff. And that's it, my friends. With this, we finished part 2. In this part, we went over UVs, a little bit of retopo, and of course the bakes to make sure that everything that we've done so far is working perfectly nice. I know there's some people are gonna say, oh, but Dave, you used a very different technique to what you normally show in retopology courses. And yes, that is true. In the retopology course, for instance, we focus on topology that's gonna be deforming, that's gonna be animated. For things like this, and you've seen this in photogrammetry, the techniques that I show you here are perfectly valid. But of course, please always check with your clients, always check with your art lead if these techniques are available to use in the project that you're working on. That's it, my friends. Don't forget, always learning, always improving, and I'll see you back on the next part.